Day 8 of the Diddy trial ended with a dramatic twist. Prosecutors played the last known recording of music icon Prince, a piece of evidence that had been buried deep in the case files. The courtroom was stunned, and the revelation left Diddy's high-profile legal team, Mark Agnifilo, Tenny Garagos, and Brian Steele, scrambling to respond. No one on his defense team could have anticipated what the recording would expose. From exclusive audio clips to leaked testimonies and even a reported case of arson, Week 2 of the Diddy trial has been filled with shocking developments that are rapidly shifting the tone of the case.
The Diddy party I went to was at Prince's house. So you want to go to Prince's house to the Diddy party where Tyrese is performing and Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher are swinging on swings. That is what's happening on the other side of the wall. And so the one thing that makes this party different than a Jamie Foxx party or any other celebrity party that wrangles a bunch of young women or guys or whatever too, is that Diddy didn't let you bring your security in the party. That is the one thing that I thought was odd because, you know, I came one time with my security and no other security other than Diddy's security is allowed to be inside the building. I mean, I saw Jay-Z and TD Jakes in there. Every major celebrity you can think of who may or may not get along may be on the other side of that gate with no security. And so now as you see this unfold, my wonder is, well, why weren't people able to have...
According to new revelations, Diddy once hosted one of his infamous private parties, referred to as a freak-off, at Prince's house, but Prince himself wasn't present. Sources say that Prince deliberately distanced himself from the event, knowing the kind of activities associated with Diddy. In a bold move, Prince had hidden cameras installed that recorded everything that took place during the party. He reportedly intended to use the footage to expose Sean Diddy Combs. On Thursday, prosecutors presented a powerful piece of evidence, an audio recording of Prince outlining his plan to reveal the truth. In the recording, Prince spoke about the risks involved in standing up to powerful figures in the industry and admitted he believed Diddy would retaliate. The court was left shaken by this testimony, as it painted Prince not only as a witness to troubling behavior, but also as someone who was ready to challenge it, no matter the cost.
I'm going to roll the clip now. Here we go.
Individuals who were allegedly paid for their silence. Prince mentioned specific amounts, $2 million to one person, $1.3 million to another, that perfectly matched financial records the prosecution had presented earlier in the trial. I've seen the payments, Prince stated. I've seen the NDAs they signed. This isn't just rich people behaving badly. It's systematic and calculated. The precision of Prince's knowledge suggested he had access to information that only an industry insider could know. As the recording continued, Prince's voice grew more somber. I'm making this recording because I'm afraid to speak out publicly. The power structure in this industry protects people like him. Nobody wants to believe what happened behind closed doors. The recording ended with words that sent chills through the courtroom. If anything happens to me, make sure this gets to the right people. This isn't just about protecting myself, it's about protecting everyone who hasn't been able to speak. Diddy.
So Diddy was just eliminating his competition or anybody who got in his way. What a menace P. Diddy was. I feel blessed never having to encounter something as evil as him. All right, if you didn't know, now you know. There you have it.
Before concluding her testimony, Cassie made a powerful statement by naming Usher, alleging that he witnessed Diddy physically assaulting, threatening, and mistreating her, but chose to do nothing. According to Cassie, Usher remained silent and effectively helped cover up Diddy's actions while she cried out for help. She claimed that others around Diddy, his associates and staff, also stood by without intervening as she was harmed. Prosecutors played audio recordings during the trial, where Cassie's screams could reportedly be heard in the background of these disturbing incidents. The recordings deeply unsettled the jury, adding even more emotional weight to Cassie's account.
Recording played in the courtroom today. I don't know in the courtroom if there was a reaction, but kind of give the context to that and what the reaction was.
One of the things that the government keeps bringing up is that Cassie felt like she was being blackmailed by Combs, that he had videos of these drug-fueled sex parties known as freak-offs, and that he threatened to release those videos publicly, and that at one point he even showed them to people, and that this was to embarrass her, to silence her, and to force her to keep having freak-offs, that he hung it over her head. And in one shocking moment today, I was in the courtroom. They actually played audio of Cassie screaming at a man named Sujit. This was after she had learned that he might have actually seen one of those freak-off videos. But in that audio recording, that Cassie actually was the one who recorded herself talking to Sujit. In this recording, she is screaming at him, saying that she'll kill him, or that she'll have someone else take care of him and kill him. And it's a different side of Cassie that really none of us have ever heard before. I definitely don't think it's the last time that we're going to hear that audio recording. I think at some point we'll see the defense or even the prosecution circle back to that. The overall vibe today in the courtroom is that Combs' defense team is struggling. There's a lot of stopping and starting because the prosecutors are constantly objecting to the evidence that they're trying to admit. The judge is even getting frustrated at one point, saying that we need to set ground rules.
Dawn Richards says she wasn't alone in witnessing Sean Diddy Combs' abuse. During her second day of testimony in the music mogul's federal trial, the 41-year-old described an alleged 2010 incident of Combs punching then-girlfriend Cassie Ventura at a West Hollywood, California restaurant, and said Usher was also a witness to the event. During her testimony May 19th per NBC News, which had a reporter in the courtroom, she said, quote, Mr. Combs punched Cassie in the stomach. They were having a private conversation, and then he punched her in the stomach. She immediately leaned over and left. In addition to Usher, Richard, who was a member of the girl group Danity Kane, which was formed on Combs' show Making the Band in 2004, alleged that other musicians, including singer Neo, record exec Jimmy Iovine, and rapper Big Daddy Kane were present as well. When Richard and Ventura got into a car to leave after the alleged restaurant incident, Richard said another physical altercation took place between Combs, who has pleaded not guilty to all charges, and his then-girlfriend. She continues in her testimony, quote, we got in the car to head back to her house. Combs grabbed her, slapped her, popped her in the mouth, and told her to shut the up.
Prosecutors presented jurors with evidence recovered from Sean Combs' hotel room at the time of his arrest. Items that included large amounts of cash, drugs, weapons, and hundreds of bottles of baby oil. According to the prosecution, this evidence suggests that even after being indicted, Diddy continued to engage in disturbing behavior. Homeland Security officials also revealed that DNA collected from the scene confirmed the presence of multiple women in the room with him. Prosecutors argued that this reinforces a pattern of conduct, showing a lack of remorse and a continued involvement in the same activities under investigation.
Inside Combs' Miami mansion, the day federal agents busted the gate open last year to raid it. A federal agent testifying about the evidence, guns and ammo seized from Diddy's home that were found near alleged freak-off supplies, which included dozens of bottles of baby oil and boxes of platform heels, bondage restraints, and bundles of rope. Also photographed as evidence that day, motivational messages on Combs' bathroom mirror that included, "You a legend," and "Upward motion," and drugs. Lots of drugs, including ones found in plastic bags inside a Gucci bag, and orange tablets with the Tesla logo that tested positive for ecstasy.
It's got new exhibits today. Take a look at these photos that prosecutors have just released. They're pictures of Diddy's former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, with what she says are bruises on her back and legs, which you can see here, and also a gash above her eye. Also released today, some pictures from when Diddy was arrested in September of last year at the Park Hyatt Hotel in New York. And a special agent with Homeland Security testified last week that some of the items found included baby oil, drugs, these pink packets of ketamine. There's also this image of a knife wedged in a door. Now, Combs, we aren't sure if he's going to be taking a stand in his own defense, but he denies all of the allegations against him. But will all of these witnesses really prove the government's charges that he was running this criminal empire and that he's guilty of?
One of the male escorts allegedly hired by Diddy to engage with Cassie has now testified in court, and his statements have been deeply disturbing. He described how Cassie would appear visibly distressed, sighing and showing clear discomfort each time Diddy instructed him to be intimate with her. In her own testimony, Cassie shared how the experience made her feel degraded and objectified, saying her stomach would turn at the thought of being passed around. Despite her emotional pain, she admitted she was too afraid to refuse, fearing how Diddy might react if she said no.
And after Cassie's mom stepped down, a man who goes by the name, wait for it, The Punisher. The Punisher is an exotic dancer and former sex worker whose real name is Sheree Hayes. Mr. Hayes told the jury that he got his nickname playing basketball, but his photos, they seem to tell a different story for why he may be using that name today. Ooh, kind of safe for work, almost not safe for work. I wouldn't put it up at work, but that's the Punisher, y'all. Mr. Punisher testified that he was hired by Diddy and Cassie for 8 to 12 different times, things like episodes. And he was meant to create a sexy scene that would last for hours. He said that Diddy called all the shots in these episodes. He didn't call them freak-offs, but he described what we've heard as freak-offs. He never saw any cameras, he said. He didn't see any violence. And he said, although Cassie would sometimes wince or sigh at some of the sex directions that came from Diddy, he said it didn't seem as though Cassie was there against her will. Again, this is a prosecution witness, so that's kind of, that's on the fence there. He does certainly corroborate the freak-offs and what happened in the freak-offs, but that whole business about, to him, he wasn't sure if Cassie was into it or not, but he did hear that she winced and that she sighed as Diddy gave a lot of those directions. By the way, the Punisher also said that he never saw Diddy take drugs, never saw that he seemed drunk or high, which is exactly what prosecutors are trying to show, that this was not just an out-of-control, party of an enlisted megastar, but instead was a clear-eyed criminal.
Cassie testified that she often felt completely alone, as Diddy allegedly worked to isolate her from everyone she trusted, including her own family. According to her, he would target anyone she reached out to, even her mother. Cassie's mother took the stand and revealed that she feared for her daughter's safety, knowing she was in serious danger. In a chilling moment, she said Diddy once threatened her directly, demanding $20,000 if she wanted to see Cassie alive. Prosecutors emphasized that the threat wasn't about money. It was about power, control, and humiliating Cassie's family, further deepening her isolation.
Brought in Cassie's mom. She was on the stand today as well. She talked about having to take out a $20,000 loan just to prevent Diddy from putting out a sex tape that involved her daughter, Cassie. Talk about some of those details that we heard as well. I mean, for any mother, this has to be a nightmare situation.
That's exactly right. And I think that was, you want to talk about effective and non-effective testimony. I think that was a very effective because, again, to go back to what the defense is trying to paint here, that this was Cassie and she knowingly and wittingly went along with these things. But to hear mom say, look, I had to go and I had to come up with this money so I could pay Diddy to protect my daughter. That goes against what the defense has said. And it, I think, shows that you've got somebody who was very worried about some of this material being seen by the public. And that doesn't sound like somebody who wittingly went along with some of the things that she was asked by her boyfriend to do. So I think that was very powerful testimony. And it certainly goes to show what the prosecution is trying to say, that again, that Cassie was coerced into doing these things, and she was messaged that if you don't do what I want you to do, me being Diddy, then you're going to really have to deal with some very substantial repercussions here. And I think that was the point of mom's testimony.
Absolutely, and that's some of the footage of Cassie's.
Diddy allegedly acted with full awareness of his actions, deliberately, mistreating Cassie in front of others to send a clear message. No one in his circle would intervene or help her. Prosecutors argue that these were not random acts, but carefully planned tactics meant to break her spirit. They described these incidents as part of a pattern of humiliation and control, rituals designed to isolate victims and make them feel helpless and alone. Cassie even testified that at one point, she screamed for help and begged someone to save her, but no one responded. This, she said, made her feel completely abandoned.
He would start to see all of these things take place. He was on direct describing an incident on a private plane between Sean and Cassie, in which he described Sean as holding up like a rocks glass, and heard Cassie then say, isn't someone seeing this? Talking about a beating that was taking place right there in the moment. Now, George eventually left because he said he was tired of hiding the domestic violence from everyone. So he's a former executive assistant to Combs, and he testified that he witnessed Combs be violent with Ventura while on that private jet in 2015. He did hear that glass break and saw Combs standing over Ventura. He told the jury that Ventura did scream, isn't anyone seeing this? So that's been some of the testimony. He has testified to several incidents of domestic violence that he saw at the hands of Sean Combs toward Cassie, and then also a name we've heard in this case, Gina. Julie, when Cassie was on the stand, as well as one of her friends, that was Carrie Morgan, she was saying that Gina was a real problem. George Kaplan was talking about some domestic violence that he witnessed toward Gina as well, a time when Sean was throwing apples really hard at Gina, and Gina was...
Forensic psychologist Dr. Don Hughes took the stand in the trial, offering expert insight into the psychological impact of Diddy's alleged abuse on Cassie. Her testimony helped the jury understand how cycles of control and fear can trap victims in abusive relationships, making it extremely difficult to leave, even when the harm is clear. Dr. Hughes explained how emotional, psychological, and physical manipulation can erode a person's sense of agency and safety over time. In response, Diddy's legal team pointed to his diagnosis of bipolar disorder and a history of anger management issues, potentially as part of their defense strategy.
Not interview Cassie, any victims in this case. She was providing general testimony about victims of domestic abuse, how they cope, what different levels of abuse there are, how do people recover from it, the trauma they experience, really what was taking place in regard to the back and forth, the cross as well as the direct, was a lot of attacking by defense counsel as to her credibility and her qualifications. We do have some testimony we can put up for you, though, on this when she was on the stand this morning. Let's go ahead and put that up, and I can tell you exactly a little bit more about it. So Hughes confirmed that she has never testified in the defense of a man accused of a sex crime. This was on the cross-examination. I don't evaluate offenders, is what she responded with. Hughes maintained that prosecutors have not discussed specifics of this case with her. This cross-examination was done by an attorney named Mr. Bach. And you could tell Judge Ashley, when he was doing his cross-examination, he is very skilled at cross-examining expert witnesses. He again brought up how much money she is being paid and how much she makes from really just being an expert witness in trials. So he was asking her about that.
But something interesting came up was when Combs' defense team referenced his bipolar disorder. And that's really the first time that we're hearing that he might actually have a diagnosed clinical condition. We know that he has talked about his temper, his mood swings. I mean, that's how he got his nickname, right? Puffy, because he huffs and he puffs. But it's no laughing matter. We know that he's capable of incredibly terrifying violence. Just take a look at that 2016 security footage of Cassie being brutally beaten by him. And so, now we're learning that perhaps he might have been on medication. He sought treatment, and he may have bipolar.
Mental health challenges like bipolar disorder do not excuse the serious and prolonged abuse Diddy is accused of committing. It's important to recognize that while such conditions can affect behavior, they are not a justification for harming others. Prosecutors have emphasized that Diddy's actions, allegedly abusing Cassie for more than a decade, were consistent, calculated, and repeated over time. Earlier in the trial, his legal team attempted to frame his behavior as the result of drug use or isolated lapses in judgment. However, the pattern of alleged abuse described in court suggests far more than a momentary mistake. It points to a long-term campaign of control and harm.
Well, you started to list it, Eva, the guns, the drugs, the freak-off supplies. And I think what was most striking, perhaps, for the jury to see was the proximity. There were the AR-15 style assault rifles right in the same shelving unit as the baby oil and the Astroglide and the platform heels and the lingerie. And then in another part of the house, there was the loaded .45 caliber handgun that was found in a red suitcase. All of this was being kept by Combs for what reason we don't know, but federal prosecutors, I think, are hoping to make a link, especially between the guns and the freak-offs, because their whole theory of the case is that Combs used violence and the threat of violence to coerce women, particularly Cassie Ventura, but other women as well, into these sexual performances.
Abilities increased. He began to set up the hotel rooms. And what did he say that he would use to set up the hotel rooms? He said they would have what was called a hotel bag. Inside that hotel bag would be things like the baby oil, the Astroglide, liquor, drugs, he mentioned. So he mentioned several different items that he would bring in to set up the hotel rooms. He also said that afterwards, what his responsibility was to clean up those hotel rooms after things were taking place behind closed doors. And he said he wanted to do this, put the room back together as perfectly as possible, because he didn't want anyone selling any kind of photographs of the hotel room to try to make Sean Combs look.
Brief relationship with Cassie Ventura during this time, and Combs allegedly made threats against him because of it. Scuddy testifying that he believes Combs actually broke into his house, and testified that a few months later, a Molotov cocktail was placed on his Porsche, damaging his car. He told the jury he reached out to Combs after his car caught fire and described him with his hands behind his back like a Marvel supervillain. Combs has pleaded not guilty to all charges, and his defense team says any sexual encounters were all consensual. Legal contributor Eric Faddis joins me now for more. So, Eric, what do you think? How does Ms. Scuddy's testimony impact Combs' arson charges and the racketeering conspiracy counts that he faces, you think?
Yeah, Kira, I think we're firmly moving into RICO territory here. We're getting past some of the sex trafficking allegations, talking about a criminal enterprise that was allegedly engaged in committing crimes. And so Kid Cudi's testimony goes to trying to prove some of those predicate offenses. He says that Diddy and his team burglarized his home after Diddy found out that he was dating Cassie Ventura, and then shortly thereafter blew up his vehicle, which goes to arson. And so that was really the thrust of the testimony. That was the purpose for putting him on. There were some points scored by defense as well.